Well, thank you for coming and helping us get the word out to all the public, because everyone in the low-lying areas must really heed our warning. Everyone in a low-lying area must begin to make preparations to move out of their homes now. This is a very serious storm. We are doing everything we can to protect the public. This is the emptiest this room has been all day, because since 9 o'clock this morning, it's been filled with every department head, every hospital, every ambulance corps worker, volunteers. The room, there was standing room only most of the day here to begin preparing to make sure everything the city can do, we will be doing to ensure people are safe within their homes. But let me be very clear. This is a very powerful storm. Everyone must begin to take measures to protect the health and safety of all their family members and their pets. After Katrina, there was a lot of emphasis on the pets that were left behind. Our animal control office can help remove pets to our kennel. We have capacity. We anticipate that emergency shelters will be open sometime midday tomorrow. The chief and Scott will give you more details about that. But I believe my role as chief elected official is to make sure that every single person in Bridgeport remains safe, and that there is no loss of life or limb in this most serious of storms. We cannot take this lightly. Now, we anticipate the governor will be declaring a state of emergency to evacuate. When that occurs, the chief will give you the details of how that will happen. There will be emergency vehicles proceeding through all low-lying areas to assist people in leaving their homes. People need to make the plans now to leave all flood areas. We will have shelters for them, but they're going to have to leave, and the consequences of not leaving not only is putting your family at risk of injury or worse, but we anticipate that the roads in the city will be closed in many areas for a significant period of time. We are anticipating the electricity will be out for a significant period of time. This is a massive storm. We haven't had to deal with the likes of a storm like this since Hurricane Gloria, when the chief and I were young men and just starting out in Bridgeport. So I need everyone's cooperation in the public. What I would really like to do is have everybody go out, knock on the door next to you on the left, knock on the door right of you to the right, and tell people of this incoming significant storm. We can't assume that everybody knows. Despite the media attention, there are still people that are not aware and have not made their plans. This is my emergency preparedness kit that we keep, and we can show you some of the ingredients of that kit, but obviously the most important thing is have a battery-powered flashlight available. Have water available. And as the people in the low-lying areas prepare to evacuate their homes, they must take with them all of the medications they'll need for at least a week. I have to stress, we do not know how long it will take for us to reopen parts of the city. And people shouldn't be fearful if they're not in a low-lying area, that the storm impact will not be the same. Between the water surge from the high tide, which is hitting us just at the wrong time of the peak of the storm, there will be areas of low-lying parts of the city that are going to be inaccessible. That's why we need people to get out. We won't be able to reach them in case of an emergency. So it's very important that we get the public's cooperation now, begin to make preparations to live somewhere else for a couple of days outside of a low-lying area, and there will be shelters available. I'm going to turn it over now to Chief Gaudette, who's going to talk about the sheltering operation and other emergency preparedness that he's been working on. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. We have made arrangements here in the city of Bridgeport to open shelters around noontime tomorrow. We will be opening Bassick High School and Harding High School around noon, and they will be made available to people who are evacuating low-lying areas. We are asking people who do live in low-lying areas if they could voluntarily evacuate. It would be wise to do so now. There is a limited amount of time for us to be able to carry out an evacuation, and we would ask folks to start as quickly as possible. Once we do order an evacuation, once the governor has ordered an evacuation, we anticipate that we will have police and firefighters in the streets, along with our Greater Bridgeport Transit bus and animal control officers, as well as any specialized vehicles that we will need to help evacuate people out of the low-lying areas and into the shelters. We've also arranged for some extra parking if people have more than one car, or if they're going to evacuate with their car. We're going to ask them to park at the JFK campus on the east side of town if they're going to go to the Harding shelter, and at Northern Park at the old King Cole parking lot if they're going to shelter at the Bassick High School. So the shelters will not open until noon. Again, they will not open until noon tomorrow. So those folks who can evacuate voluntarily and spend the next couple of days with friends or family on higher ground, we would ask that they do that as quickly as possible. And we anticipate that we will be commencing a mandatory evacuation on or about noon tomorrow.
Thank you, Chief. I think you have a copy. We have declared a civil preparedness emergency, and you have copies of that, the powers that gives the city, and I think that gives us the powers required for all of our departments to assure people are safe within the city of Bridgeport. I think Scott Appleby would like to talk more about the storm, its trajectory, and the possible consequences of a storm this size.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, we are anticipating here at the city of Bridgeport to get impacted by a pretty severe Category 1 to a low Category 2 hurricane. The direction right now, or the projections from the National Hurricane Center, have this storm impact in our area with tropical storm force winds sometime between 10 o'clock at night on Saturday to midnight early morning Sunday. The hurricane force winds will soon come after that. Projections indicate that those storm winds will impact us sometime in either the late morning to early afternoon time frame. And then again, depending on the exact projection of the track of the storm, we'll then have that tropical storm force winds that will come back in towards later on in the evening. We cannot emphasize enough, again, folks that are in low-lying areas, to stay calm, to make sure you have a plan of action. You definitely have your emergency kit prepared to go, and that you voluntarily begin your evacuations to relatives or friends' homes. The winds will be gusty. We are looking at sustained winds of 100 miles an hour. So at that point in time, we can't anticipate outages, trees and power lines and other types of concerns from that standpoint. We are not taking this lightly. Because we haven't had a storm in a long period of time, it becomes kind of that reactive attitude. But we just want you to understand, we can replace property. We cannot replace lives. So please adhere to our regulations and our instructions. And if there's any information that residents need to ask us, or we will be there to advise them properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. We really have to emphasize, the city of Bridgeport only on rare occasions takes a direct hit from a massive storm. And that's exactly what we have to prepare for, a direct hit from a massive storm. If the water precipitation predictions are to be believed, we could have as much as 10 inches of rain. Our ground simply cannot absorb that. Our sewers simply cannot absorb that. Long Island Sound simply cannot absorb that. There will be water everywhere in the low-lying areas. Please heed our call. This is very serious. Charles Carroll, Director of Public Facilities and Director of Parks and Recreation, is going to talk to us about what the public works crews are readying to do when the storm hits. Charles?
Thank you, Mayor. We are prepared. All the city equipment is up. Everything has been topped off. We're ready to go. But as the three gentlemen before me have stressed to you, this is a very serious storm. Something like the likes of none of us have probably ever seen here. We, for the safety of our own workers and our own people, we're not going to send people out in the middle of the storm either, so please heed everybody's advice to get out when you can. We will react as the storm develops and comes along, but again, we don't anticipate going out in the street. A fallen tree in the street is not going to, have me send workers out in the middle of the storm. So please take the time to get out, and if you have a problem, by all means call us and let us know, and the decision will be made here as to how soon we can react to it.
I think we're ready for questions, if anybody has questions. Members of the media, Deb?
Is there a list of actual streets that are in the low-lying area?
Anyone can go to the website, or we could pull them up now and you can see the sites, and we could print you a list of the streets. And that, especially in your neighborhood, Deb. Deb lives Union Avenue, low-lying area. You're about 200 yards, 300 yards from the water. You are in a low-lying area. You need to make plans to be somewhere else for the next few days. John?
Did I hear you correctly? Is there mandatory evacuation?
We can't order a mandatory evacuation, but we anticipate the governor will.
Okay.
This is the size and scope of a storm that will require a mandatory reaction from the government.
The Weather Channel, I was just told, was talking about a wall of water hitting the Bridgeport region. Have you heard that too?
Well, I think that's pretty much what we've been saying in different words. 10 inches of rain from a storm this large is something that none of us have ever seen before.
What's the storm surge?
And high tide is at the same time as the storm will be hitting. So there's not going to be any capacity in Long Island Sound to take the water. I know that the state DEP on the conference call this morning with the governor talked about trying to give permission to lower certain dams, and I know that's being worked on. But in 24 hours you probably aren't going to be able to create that much capacity, but it could create some. I think the most important thing is nature is going to be very furious starting in 24 hours and lasting for 24 hours. And people need to get out of the path of the nature's fury, which will be the greatest in the low-lying areas. This is nothing to fool around with. This is something we've got to take very seriously. I think we all remember those images of people up on the roofs of their houses pleading for rescue during Katrina. I don't want to see anything like that happen here. We need the public's cooperation. We have plenty of time. We have plenty of professional expertise here. We have government and non-government filling this room up for the next 24 hours. We've already been at work all day today, honing our plan that we've had and practiced many times. But the public needs to cooperate. We can't go in and rescue people during the fury of the storm. They're going to have to get out ahead of time. There won't be a way for us to mobilize emergency workers when this storm is hitting us. You're going to have to be inside. That's the only way to survive a storm like this. Steve?
What capacity do you see your ability to hold people, to put them up for any extended period of time? I mean, like Katrina, are we looking at opening the arena and Harbor Yard?
We're going to manage the system as it develops. Scott could tell you how we do mass care. I don't believe that anything like that could ever exist here because they didn't have the planning that we have here, and they didn't have the emergency response team that we've had with the warning that we've had. So I don't want to say never, but I think we're much further ahead on the game than they were in New Orleans. But I'll let Scott comment on it more fully.
Our procedures here in the city when it comes to mass care and evacuation is all of our schools are either termed a long-term or short-term shelter. You have to remember, during the storm, it's safety first. Lining individuals up in the hallways, interior hallways, away from windows and doors, as we would recommend to a resident. Once that storm bypasses us, we will then make the assessments of long-term needs. Cots, blankets, medication, medical supplies are pre-positioned as we speak at these locations. So we've exercised, we've tested our mass care procedures. We do know they work. We've had them activated during the tornado. We've had them activated as recent as the winter time and some of our large-scale fires. The one thing that we do recommend for residents, especially those with any functional or access needs is that you bring with you that medication or those supplies that you can function with to the shelter. And if it ever got bad where medically we need to move you, we would move those individuals. But we certainly wouldn't use the arena. That's in a flood zone where we learned our lesson from the Superdome in New Orleans. So we never would evacuate residents from a flood zone back into a flood zone.
What's the capacity for the 2 schools?
Right now, our capacity is probably about 2,000 individuals in the safety-wise. For long-term care, you're probably coming back down to about 1,200. But again, those are just 2 schools. All of our schools are termed either long-term or short-term shelter. So we'll adjust our planning accordingly.
And the Board of Education has been very involved with this. School, unfortunately, opening day of school was supposed to be Monday. That is canceled, and we're going to do it day by day, Alan, as this storm progresses. But we've been joined by Deputy Chief Porzelt, who has some very, very important information. You know, we're focused on all of the low-lying areas because that's where the greatest risk to human health and safety occurs. But there are other risks that are elevated during a storm like this. Fire is a serious problem when the electricity goes out, and Deputy Chief wants to admonish us and warn us about how to stay safe in all the other areas of the city where they won't be flooding.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I've only got a few things for you. One, please do not use candles. I've said in the past, but people keep using them. In fact, the 2 firemen that we lost 1 year ago, they were killed due to a candle fire in that house. They had candles and they didn't put them out, they left them, they went unattended, and that's what happened. So please do not use candles, only flashlights or the battery operated candles that they sell online all the time. My wife has about 10 of them. There's no candles in my house, but they do have the battery candles in my house. And another thing, please, if you do stay home, do not go out on the roadways, and definitely do not go out walking. Every time there's a flood, the manhole covers lift and they move over. If you should be walking across the street to get to the other side of the road and you step into the hole that the manhole cover should be covering, trust me, you'll probably go down and you'll never make it back up again. It happens all over the country. It's a major concern for us too when we go to fires and flooded streets and whatnot. Usually we'll take a pike pole or a stick, or we put 1 foot in front of us to make sure there is road there. On the sidewalk, you probably won't have a problem, but you shouldn't be out anyhow. But anyhow, please be very mindful of no candles. Don't leave your house, stay in there. If you lose power, like I said, do not use candles. You should have a flashlight, batteries, extra batteries, if you can find them, if they didn't buy them already. But that's all I really have to say. And do not go out driving, most of all. Do not go out once the storm begins. Stay home. If you have power, listen to the radio and the TV. Thank you.
Chief Rooney's here. Chief?
Just a reminder again that we would really like everyone to stay home during the storm. I mean, there's really 3 parts to this. The first part is what we're doing right now is planning. The second part is the storm. And the third part is after the storm. What do we do? Okay, right now we're preparing for it. We're telling you the things that we're asking you to do. We're giving you suggestions. We're going to be setting up shelters. We're going to be out there tomorrow helping with evacuation. During the storm, we're going to do our very best to respond to the emergencies that we can and that we're allowed to respond to. If the winds are too high and it's too strong out there, we're going to be very careful and selective on what we do respond to. After the storm, everyone wants to get out and see the damage. Be very mindful of wires that are down, even cable wires, telephone wires, they can be charged. You must be very, very careful of them. Stay away from them. Don't use a stick to push them away. Just totally stay away from them. And wait until the public facilities gets out there and clears the roads, and listen to your radio, and we will do the best we can to respond to any emergencies that we are called to go to. But remember one thing, we can never ever guarantee your safety. You have to be responsible for some of that as well. Okay? Thank you.
If there aren't any other questions, we have to, yes.
Real quick, animal shelters. You guys plan on evacuating them, or are they staying?
There's no excuse for anybody to stay in their home because of their animals. The animals are accepted at both shelters, both Harding and Bassick, and there are also capacity in our animal shelter to house animals for several days here. So we need everyone to leave. Don't use your pets as an excuse that you're staying in your home for your pets. We'll handle that. Both shelters must be, it's a mandatory rule, they must be capable of handling the pets, and the owners are allowed to stay with their pets in the shelters.
You said the pets stay with the animals in the shelter.
Separate, yeah.
Scott?
A lot of us don't.
Scott can handle that.
In the congregated area, the general area, the only animals that are allowed in that general area are service animals, according to federal and American Red Cross regulations. What we've done is after Hurricane Katrina, we've had to provide a universal access. So on one side of the building, the pets would be located. Who better to take care of their pets than the pet owner? On the congregate care or the general care, the only pets that would ever be allowed their animals would be service animals at that time. And then again, anybody with any special need or vulnerable population would also be able to access that area also.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.